Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaja. So there's a sit down. Go frame and Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 5, Chapter 14, The Forest of Enjoyment, Text 6. So this is prose Sanskrit, so I'll just read it because there's no meter to it. Tatra cha kochid atapodaka nivan vishayan upadavati anabhojana yavyayadi yasana lolupa. Tatra, there, in this phantom place. Cha, also. Kochit, sometimes. Atapa udaka nibbana, like the water in a mirage in the desert. Vishayan, the objects of sense enjoyment. Upadavati, runs after. Ana, to drinking. Ojana, to eating. Yavaya, to sex life. Adi, and so on. Yasana, with addiction. Lolupa, a debauchee. Translation. Sometimes in this house in the sky, Gandharvapur, the conditioned soul drinks, eats, and has sex. Being overly attached, he chases after the objects of the senses, just as a deer chases a mirage in the desert. Purport. There are two worlds, the spiritual and the material. The material world is false, like a mirage in the desert. In the desert, animals think they see water, but actually there is none. Similarly, those who are animalistic try to find peace within the desert of material life. It is repeatedly said in different shastras that there is no pleasure in this material world. Furthermore, even if we agree to live without pleasure, we are not allowed to do so. In Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that the material world is not only full of miseries, dukkhalayam, but also temporary, ashashvatam. Even if we want to live here amid miseries, material nature will not allow us to do so. It will oblige us to change bodies and enter another atmosphere full of miserable conditions. Translation again. Sometimes in this house in the sky, Gandharvapura, the conditioned soul drinks, eats, and has sex. Being overly attached, he chases after the objects of the senses, just as a deer chases a mirage in the desert. Om Gana Chimanandasya Gana Shalakaya Chakshunvikangena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. This chapter is Judd Bart's further elucidation about his allegory, the forest of material enjoyment. He spoke it in the previous chapter with all its elements, and he did give some amplification of what he's talking about, some elucidation. It just seeped out, even though he was just presenting the basic themes. And now in this chapter, he's giving the full elucidation, the full explanation of his allegory. So just consider, here we are in the forest of material enjoyment. What are we doing here? We're here because we have a desire to be the controller and the enjoyer. And for that so-called privilege, we have to work so hard. But the illusion looks so good, it looks so real. The objects of the senses seem so naturally a part of our life, a part of our existence. This is why in the 11th canto, Uddhava is having a discussion with Krishna. And Uddhava explains a basic problem on the path back to Godhead, or the quest for any level of spiritual understanding. Brahman, Paramatma, Bhagavan, Narayan, Krishna, Goloka Vrindavan. So Uddhava explains that the sense objects are always flowing into the mind. Everyone has that experience. The objects of the senses look very inviting, look very enticing. That means they're entering into the mind. And then there's the reverse. The mind is sinking itself into the sense objects. You can catch yourself as you become more disciplined in genuine yoga. You can catch how the sense objects are flowing into your mind and how your mind is running to the sense objects. So it's a loop going on endlessly. And for that endless loop, we have to work so hard. When the Shastra talks about work, it's not simply referring to paid employment. It's referring to the struggle of the senses to connect with sense objects and get satisfied and fulfilled. So this struggle is constantly going on. The sense objects entering into the mind sinking itself, taking refuge in the sense object. So Uddhava says to Krishna, how, when all this is going on, how can there be self-realization? How can there be any solution? This just goes on and on and on. Not only in this lifetime, but countless lifetimes in so many different bodies. But we feel okay where we are, right? And that is the sweet gift of Maya. Sweet meaning dangerously sweet, poisonously sweet. That We feel no compunction, no urge to get out of this place. In fact, we want to make this place a nice place. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Dukkhalayam Shashvatam, it's a temporary, miserable place. As we heard in the purport, even if you want to tolerate the miseries, still you get kicked out. It's not that, all right, I understand that it's miserable, but I'll hang in there, ride the waves. No. Temporariness is also a misery. That's hard for people to understand. Let me tell you something that happened to me in Hamilton Friday. I'll try to say it palatably. After my talk, there was a very nice lady. She looked about 65 years old, well, she looked withered by material life. Her beauty had long departed. Her face was shriveled. Her anatomy wasn't attractive at all, just string bean. That's what old age does. It'll happen to you. Time will get the last laugh. So I gave my talk, and she came up to me afterwards and said, you know, what's wrong with just being physical in relationships? What's wrong with that? So I wanted to be kind and gentle. So I didn't immediately pounce upon her like, you're working so hard to get the same flavor that the cats and dogs get for free. No, I didn't say that, though it's true. As Prahlad Maharaj testifies, he's 5 years old and he understood those things. So I listened to her. She explained she's been married with her husband for 35 years. I congratulated her for that. It's really good these days. 35 years, you're with the same person. She kind of looked at me in a wry way, like, what's the big deal? He is what he is. I am what I am. What's so great about being together with the same person for 35 years? I tried to explain to her, that's quite an accomplishment these days. You must have something positive going in your relationship. So she said, well, he wants to be a yogi. He's 65. He's tired of physicality. I don't see any need to finish this experience. No, it gives pleasure. So I thought, should I explain more of what I already said about material pleasure in general during my talk? That temporariness is misery. If something is so good, it should last. But I could see that she was quite attached to her viewpoint. And she admitted, it's got to end sooner or later. I said, either you give it up or it's going to give you up. That's what my husband said. I said, well, he's telling you the right thing. She gave me another wry look like, I wanted to tell her, look, you're 65 years old. Time to call it quits. Long overdue. But instead I said, have another pakora with tomato sauce on top. But this is a basic problem that she's highlighting, which everyone struggles with. Just because it's temporary, does that mean it's bad? Temporariness has some value. This is why we need to hear regularly, because only by hearing can we detect another reality. Otherwise, we'll force ourselves to stick to chewing the chewed. Because unless you hear constantly about the reality, you must fall victim to the mirage. You must. Because you're part of Krishna, and Krishna is full of pleasure, and as a part of Krishna, you are pleasure seeking. So that can be your doom, or that can be a great benediction, depending on whether you choose to make the spiritual world your home or the material world your home. So you look at all the forms of social organization in the material world. Whatever unit of social organization is there, family, neighborhood, society, nations, they're all just, each one in the smallest level or in the biggest way. Each one is simply a storehouse, a warehouse of material desires. That's what each unit is. Of course, the family unit is becoming more and more extinct, but still there's the city unit, the nation unit, the continental unit, but each unit on every level is simply a warehouse of material desires. That's why Srila Prabhupada explained that economic development is lust on an organized scale. There's a microcosmic exhibition of lust by the individual, and there's the macrocosmic exhibition of lust by a nation or society. The one is individualistic, the other is organized on a mass scale, but it's still the same thing. And that lust propels us deeper into the forest of material enjoyment. And there we seek fulfillment in the same old things, life after life. The illusion doesn't change in terms of its being an illusion, but sometimes it throws in front of your face different permutations, different flavors, and you think, oh, this is good. How do you get an overview on this mirage? How can you get above it and see it for what it is? You can't. It's too good. It's too enticing, too alluring. That's why Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Daivyesha Gunamai, Mamamaya Duratyaya. Krishna himself tells you as Mahesh, the master of Maya. He tells you this material energy is too difficult for you to see what's really going on. You may study all the history you want, but the fact is no one learns by studying history. They make the same mistakes again and again. You may have a past life regression, a past life therapy. So what? Again and again, we do the same thing, chewing that which has already been chewed. So how do we get out of this situation? First, you have to admit your helplessness. No matter how intelligent or materially expert you are, we are helpless. Our only hope is through hearing. And that's why Jud Bharat is explaining this allegory to Rahugana Maharaj, the forest of material enjoyment. Depending on your vision, forests can look very attractive. Well, let's go to the Waitekeries or Piha, fresh air, trees and forests and trails. But you don't know, or you're not thinking. In that forest, there's a fierce struggle for existence going on amongst all the creatures in the forest. There's life and death happening at every moment. So Jabbar is giving you the overall picture of your own forest of material enjoyment and what's really going on. Now, it does sound a bit negative, doesn't it? If you read these two chapters, chapter 13 and chapter 14 of the fifth canto, it does sound negative, like Jabbar's down on everything. But you have to understand the platform that he's speaking from. He knows there's something better. So unless we are sure there's something better, how are we going to remain free from the illusion, which is so inferior? I was reading the chapter summary to this chapter. The chapter summaries, sometimes you wonder, who wrote the chapter summaries? Srila Prabhupada wrote the chapter summaries. Yours truly wrote the chapter titles, as well as the expanded table of contents in the beginning of Bhagavatam. So in the chapter summary, Srila Prabhupada writes that in this material world, there's not a pinch, not even a pinch of the happiness we really want and need. Not a pinch. Now, what do you think about that? Something in your mind tells you, well, it's not that bad. That may be the Hare Krishna official line, but wait a minute, not even a pinch of the happiness that we want? I don't know if I can really believe that, and I don't know if I can say it to others. We all have this feeling based on our situation. It's not really that bad. There's something about the illusory energy that causes us to overlook the fact that time is dissolving our life in this body. And time is dissolving our enjoyment, our pleasure. But we're such enjoyment freaks that just give me a few moments, so-called happiness. I'll call it a day, I'll call it a night. Just a few moments. We don't see how depraved and deprived we are. That's why we need to hear constantly. So reading these chapters, you may wonder, why am I subjecting myself to all this? I want to be happy. I want to be fulfilled. Let me embrace enjoyment. But Jud Bharat is mercifully trying to prepare us for real enjoyment. But we're stubborn. So as Prabhupada starts the purport, there are two worlds, the spiritual and the material. That means there are two pleasures, spiritual and material. Now often, and I get this question all over the world, people say, well, why can't we have both? Why can't we be both the body and the spirit soul? Then we've got it all. So I have to explain to them, and you will also have to explain, that if you truly have something better, you have no room in your life for what is inferior. That people can't understand that. Well, there's this, okay, there's the spiritual and there's the material. I can have them both. Isn't that an advantageous position? Because they don't understand the spiritual reality. They have no access to the spiritual reality. So therefore they're making calculations like that. But for the self-realized person, such a statement, such a position is ludicrous. So where are people going to get the realizations that they need to withstand the pressure of illusion? Where are our own devotees going to get that from? You may notice, and I hope you never have to notice, but as soon as your hearing and chanting habits slacken, the illusion looks more and more normal. And as soon as you sharpen your hearing and chanting, once again you start to see, this is a phantasmagoria. I'm chasing a phantom. But you can't detect that without hearing from Srimad Bhagavatam, hearing the Hare Krishna mantra, hearing the kirtan, tasting prasad. All those activities, the more potent they are, the more your realization will be. So therefore, we're always seeking the association of devotees eager to go back to God. We can't stay here, even if we want to. We can't stay in this body. If you want to look at things in terms of the day of Lord Brahma, you can't stay in this world, even if you want to. This world is subject to destruction. But at least we should understand we can't stay in these bodies. So Jug Bard is trying to urge us, there's some other place. As Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Parastasmat Bhavonyo. There's another world. But that seems so distant, doesn't it? In Chaitanya Charitamrita, you can read about the performance of the Vrindavan pastimes. And in that chapter, Srivas Thakur, in the mood of Narada Muni, because that's who he is. But Narada Muni is a Vaikuntha devotee who gets access, special access to Krishna Lila in Goloka Vrindavan. But he's a Vaikuntha devotee. So he's boasting to Lord Chaitanya and Lord Chaitanya's associates. My Lakshmi Devi, she's so opulent. She sits on a throne of priceless gems. And what does Vrindavan have? Vrindavan just has twigs and grass, forest minerals, gunja berries. And what is my goddess of fortune doing? She's ruling with so much opulence. And what goes on in Goloka Vrindavan? Some gopis boiling milk and churning it into yogurt. So Sup Damodar has to say something. Sup Damodar says, wait a minute. Let me tell you about the glories of Vrindavan. The earth is made of Chintamani touchstones. All the water is like nectar. The trees are desire trees, Kalpavriksha. The cows are Kamadhenus, wish-fulfilling cows. You may think, well, that's great. If I could just sit under one of those Kalpavriksha trees or come in contact with a Kamadhenu, wish-fulfilling cow, I could list all my desires. But as Sup Damodar explains, even though the residents of Vrindavan have these Kalpavriksha trees, wish-fulfilling desire trees, they only want fruits from them. And although they have the Kamadhenus, the wish-fulfilling cows, they only want milk from them. What is this? Why is that? It's because they are totally absorbed in love of Krishna. They have no aspirations other than to please Krishna. Even when it seems that the Brijbasis are begging Krishna, save us, they're thinking, we don't want to undergo separation from Krishna. So they're begging Krishna, save us, because if we die, we'll be separated from you. Of course, they're eternal, but they're covered by Yoga Maya, they're thinking they're ordinary people, which makes the pastime sweeter. Oh, Krishna, if we die, we'll be separated from you. We don't mind dying. The problem is separation from you. Do you get it? Death, that's not our fear. We're not begging you, save us from death. We're begging you, save our association with you. That is life in Vrindavan. So Srup Damodar is presenting his rebuttal to Srivas Thakur. Lord Chaitanya interjects. Srivas Thakur, what are you up to? You're in Narada Swabhava. You're in the bhava, the emotional state of Narada Muni. That's why you're talking like this. But who are you talking to? You're talking to Srup Damodar. Who is Srup Damodar? He's a Shuddha Brajabasi. He's a pure, spontaneous Brajabasi. He'll never swallow what you're saying. And so Srup Damodar goes into a whole exposition about the glories of Vrindavan. So that's another forest. But it's not the forest of material enjoyment. Hearing Srup Damodar's presentation of Vrindavan, the touchstones, the kalpavriksha's, the kamadhenus, and every step is a dance, every word is a song. Hearing that, Srivas Thakur becomes overwhelmed with happiness and starts dancing and making sounds by slapping his armpits. And then a massive kirtan breaks out. And Lord Chaitanya is dancing and chanting. Suddenly, Lord Chaitanya reveals himself as Srimati Radharani in the midst of the kirtan. And Nityananda is watching from a respectful distance. So all this came about through Krishna Katha, through discussions of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is what happens. This is the peak potential of devotee Sangha, that through kirtan, through hearing and chanting together, Krishna manifests. Of course, this is Gaura Leela, and Lord Chaitanya is with his eternal associates. They all have identities in Krishna Leela. But the kirtan becomes so intense that Lord Chaitanya manifests as Srimati Radharani herself. So we have a choice. Which forest do we want to go to? But let us firmly understand that to get out of the forest of material enjoyment, by your own sense perception, can't do it. That's why Uddhava made that presentation to Krishna. It's not possible, it seems to me. The sense objects are always flowing into the mind, and the mind is always racing after the sense objects. It's a loop that just goes on and on and on. How can there be self-realization? This is something I'm sure so many of you have wondered. I'm chanting Hare Krishna for so many years. I'm trying to do a little bit of service while maintaining the family and dealing with family affairs. But this loop is just ongoing. What will become of me? What's my future as long as this loop is going on? And I can't see it stopping. So this, Krishna said, this question has been discussed by others. The four Kumaras discussed it. And they came to the same perplexing conclusion. They asked Brahma, and Brahma, I don't know. This is a tough one. The senses flowing to the sense objects flowing to the mind. I don't know what the solution is. in order to resolve the situation, an avatar of the Supreme Personality of God had appeared. Hamsa avatar, the swan incarnation. Because swans are very expert at separating milk from a mixture of milk and water. Similarly, Hamsa avatar can separate the original spiritual consciousness of the living entity from the material consciousness. So what was Hamsa avatar's answer? Very important for you all. Very important for everyone. He said, you can't fight it out within the loop. You've got to go above the loop by bhakti. If you try to struggle, discerning this is real, this is false, this is temporary pleasure, this is real pleasure, you'll just be bewildered. You have to go above the loop. You can't slug it out on the level of the loop. Whether mystic yoga, Sankhya yoga, fruitive activity, you can't get out of the grip. You can't get out of the loop. You have to drop out, go above the loop with bhakti. Then there is hope to escape permanently the forest of material enjoyment. And of course, there's the goal of the forest of Krishna's pleasure. What about Krishna's forest? There is a forest in Vrindavan for every season. So Krishna can take his pick according to his pastimes. One forest specializes in winter, another forest specializes in summer. One forest has all seasons going on simultaneously. This is how Krishna is the supreme enjoyer. And the whole topography of Vrindavan can shift according to the particular pastime of Krishna. The rivers, the valleys, the trees, the hills, it can all shift to match Krishna's pleasure seeking. Now just see how we try to imitate that in the material world. We try to create our own paradise in our own home, in our car. Somehow or other, let's create a place that's nice for us. So how do you explain that to people when they're desperately trying for material satisfaction and fulfillment? Do you suddenly yank it all away? It's all Maya. Then we wonder if our own devotees understand that it's all Maya. You can't see it. You have to hear about it. And through hearing, then you can see. Bhakti is so much about seeing through the ears. And as soon as you diminish that activity, your immunity from the material energy erodes, disappears gradually. So someone who's planning to go to Krishna's forest at the end of their lifetime, they're always sharpening their hearing, sharpening their chanting, no matter what ashram they're in. As Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings, Grihe Tako, Vane Tako, Sada Hari Bole Tako. Whether you're a householder and the renounced daughter, whatever, always chant Hare Krishna. This is our lifeline. Otherwise, we have no choice but to fall victim of inferior fulfillment, inferior and deadly satisfaction. It's deadly because even though it's so temporary, it binds you. You can just think, it looks so innocent, doesn't it? A little bit of material fulfillment won't do anyone any harm. That's the way Maya makes it appear. Just dabble a bit. What's wrong with a bit of dabbling? But you're engaging in activities that bind you. That we don't see. Maya doesn't let you see that. It's just a little bit of material pleasure, a little bit of material fulfillment. What's the big deal? Come on. The material energy never lets you see. You're going to be bound. You don't see that. You can only see it by hearing. And it takes constant thought, deliberation. That's what Uddhava is doing. It looks impossible to get out of this loop. The four Kumaras, looks impossible. Brahma, I don't know how to answer this one. And here we are. Yeah, we can handle it all. No problem. We're expert. So what if it's Kali Yuga? It doesn't matter. We can do it. This is our foolishness. So our hope is to hear and chant in the society of sincere devotees. Sincere devotee is someone who's trying to understand what is the material nature, what is the spiritual nature, how to satisfy Krishna. What is the positive thing that Judd Bharat presents in this chapter, which seems to be full of negative woes? He says the only positive thing is Hari Guru Charana Padma, the lotus feet of the spiritual master. Because that's Krishna's system for getting out of material illusion. That's your exit. Just like you have to have exit sign. It's over that door. There's an exit sign lit up by law. In case of fire, you go out that way. So Judd Bharat is giving you the exit door. Yes, there's fire all the time in the material world. Here's your way out. Adi Guru Charana Padma. That's Krishna's system. So the more you read these two chapters, 13 and 14 of the 5th canto, the more it starts to sink in. What am I doing here? What's my goal? Because our tendency is just to be locked into a routine and not think deeply. But if we hear in the association of devotees who are determined to go back to Godhead, we become inspired, we become enlivened. We can see through hearing the nature of the material illusion. So Judd Bharat is giving Rahugana Maharaj the greatest mercy, and that mercy is available to us. Judd Bharat is teaching you what to look for, how to truly understand what's going on all levels of material existence, family, neighborhood, society, nation, world. Each level is a storehouse of material desires, a warehouse of material desires. How to put Krishna in the center of all that. So one final point. When Lord Chaitanya was touring South India, and he was at Kurukshetra, a place in South India where there is a deity of Kurma avatar. And he was invited for lunch at the home of one Brahmana. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, the Brahmana is simply referred to as the Kurma Brahmana. And so that Kurma Brahmana knew this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He told Lord Chaitanya, you're in my home for lunch. You with the lotus feet that are meditated upon by Lord Brahma. Those feet are now in my home. So he knew this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the Brahmana and his family did puja to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. They washed his feet. and drank the water that washed the feet of Mahaprabhu. And Kurma Brahmana told Mahaprabhu, now everything about my existence is auspicious. My janma, my kula, my dana. He was a well-off Brahmana, somehow or other. Aristocratic, learned, prosperous. So he said, in spite of my janma, my kula, my dana, my birth, my aristocratic birth, my family line, my dana, my wealth, in spite of all that, now I have real auspiciousness. And all those ingredients become spiritualized. So Prabhupada explains in the purport that this Brahmana was not proud that I have this, I have that. He's simply focused on, I've got the lotus feet of Gauranga Mahaprabhu. Yet, when Lord Chaitanya was about to leave, the Brahmana said, take me with you, take me with you. I can no longer tolerate the waves of material existence. He knew there's something better. Take me with you. And what did Lord Chaitanya tell him? Don't speak like this. Stay at home, chant the Hare Krishna mantra with your family. If you do that, we'll meet again. In fact, if you do that, I'll always be with you. And that's when Lord Chaitanya gave the famous instruction, Yare deko tare koho Krishna upadesh. Ama agya guru hoye tare desh. Wherever you go, whomever you meet, teach the science of Krishna on my order. In this way, you'll be fully protected from the material energy. So in the purport, Prabhupada writes something very astonishing. He said, our devotees can preach in all the cities of the world, but they actually have the potential to transform wherever they are into Navadvip or Vrindavan. This is the peak potential of bhakti. You may say, oh, we're far from that kind of potency. But hearing about it is purifying. Hearing about it is inspiring. So yes, just like Bhaktivinoda Thakur demonstrates in his song, Shuddha Bhakata Charanarenu. He's doing arti in his home. He's got 13 children. And what is happening as he describes in that song? His house turns into Goloka Vrindavan. So Lord Chaitanya's order is for everyone. Wherever you go, whomever you meet. That could mean just your family members. In other words, according to your capacity. Or it could mean your neighborhood. It could mean your extended relatives. Some or other. Teach the science of Krishna. That's the order. Ama Agya. That's the order of Lord Chaitanya. So if we want to surrender to Krishna, that means surrendering to the order of Lord Chaitanya. To follow that order, you don't have to jet set all over the world. If you think that's a luxury, talk to me about it. But start with your family, start with your neighbors. Something. Because it's the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Don't say, oh, what does it matter what I do a little bit? It's just a drop in the bucket. What does it matter? But that's not what Lord Chaitanya said. According to your capacity, whatever you think it is, whatever the reality is as you see it, still you can teach someone, distribute to someone, share with someone. And in this way, you'll get Lord Chaitanya's, Lord Nityananda's mercy, and you'll be able to be immune from the illusion, which is so powerful. And Krishna himself testifies, it's so powerful, you can't see through it, unless Mame Prabhajante, Maya Metam Taranti. Unless you surrender to me, that means do things my way, you can't see through it. It's too good. This is humiliating, isn't it? You think, oh, come on, I'm not that dumb. I made a few mistakes. I don't repeat them. I forgive myself. I've got high self-esteem, business acumen. All that is useless when up against the power of the illusory energy. And that's why we need to hear this chapter again and again. He's pulling the cover off of everything, Judd Bart. You might want to say to him, lighten up. Come on, lighten up. Give us something positive. He does. Hari Guru Charana Padma. That's the exit out. That's the doorway marked exit with the light on. That's Krishna's system. All right, any questions? Yes. It depends on your perspective. For those who can't hear, he's asking. Sometimes it said that bhakti is easy. Sometimes it said that bhakti is difficult. So, from Uddhava's discussion and the four Kumaras' discussion with Krishna, it sounds like bhakti is very difficult. That loop of the senses and the sense objects. The mind running to the senses, the mind running to the sense objects flowing into the mind. It depends on your particular perspective, whether it's easy or difficult. If you follow Krishna's instructions, it's easy. But our problem is, how attached are we to following Krishna's instructions? In other words, we make the difficulties. We have to take ownership. We cause the problems. You look at a child, like we could look at this child here. You're a child, right? She's so dependent on her mother. She trusts her mother. Mother says, do like this, you do like that, right? Sometimes. But she can create difficulty for herself by disobeying her mother. You do that? But if she obeys her mother, look at she's holding on to her mother. So that's easy, isn't it? This is what Prahlad Maharaj says. Prahlad Maharaj says, there's no difficulty in surrendering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Just like a child establishing a relationship with the parent. No difficulty. Of course, Prahlad is not speaking about Kali Yuga presently. In the wild Western world, children have huge problems with their parents, traumas. As Shwen could tell you, he's a social worker. Huge problems. But in a sane human civilization, there's no problem with a child relating to the parent. So Prahlad says similarly, it's natural, it's organic to relate to Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But we create the problems. So it is easy. Sometimes Srila Prabhupada would say, our Krishna conscious process is simply recreation. So hard controlling my senses. It's so hard doing this, so hard doing that. I'm so busy. When will I ever chant my rounds? We make it difficult, and Lord Chaitanya is saying he makes it easy. So we have to adjust our conceptions here. Who are we listening to as the authority? We make the difficulties. Mahaprabhu, Nityananda, they make it easy. So we have to analyze, how am I creating stumbling blocks on my path back to Godhead? Anything? Yes, Dharma Setu Prabhu.
I was wondering about the chapter title,
For the fifth canto onward.
do you have anything to go on there, like if I become myself on any or do you create those?
By studying the contents, because that was my service, to be the final pair of eyes before the book went to the printer. So I just thinking what will be appropriate in terms of the name of in terms of the title, and also what's good for the book distributors. Because they're opening the book and showing Forest of Material Enjoyment. So I had both things in mind. It's amazing looking back. I was just a 3 or 4 year devotee, and yet I didn't realize the impact of the service I was doing. Not only the chapter titles, but the expanded table of contents in the beginning. I had to do that also. For Chaitanya Charitamrita after the first volume of Adi Leela also.
Read those and then ever make any feedback on that?
No. I had no idea, I must admit, of the magnitude of what I was doing. I was just doing my service. I had no idea that 50 years later, Dharma Seja Prabhu would be reading Forest of Material Enjoyment. No idea of the magnitude. Yeah. Speak up, please. Well, it's an ideal month for sharpening your hearing and chanting habits. Especially in family life, there's always busyness, right? This must be done, that must be done. Bills to pay, children to take care of, on and on it goes, right? But you can take advantage of Kartik to do even a little something just to sharpen your hearing and chanting habits. So you can take that special Kartik mercy in that way. So looking at you and your daughter, again, I'm remembering Prahlad Maharaj's instruction. It's natural. It's easy to reestablish a relationship with Krishna, just like it's easy for a child to deal with the parent. We create all these intricacies. We create all the difficulties. We make it difficult. We're obstructing our own progress back to Godhead. So we have to take ownership for our plight and analyze our life. How am I creating difficulties for myself? In the name of wanting to make the material world a nice place. It takes guidance to point out that, yes, live as nicely as you can, But if that effort obstructs your spiritual life, then it's a problem. Sometimes Prabhupada would say like that, live as comfortably as you can in the material world, but don't forget what your real priority is. So we're not saying everyone has to live under a tree, sleep out on the road or something. But we are saying, and in other words, it takes guidance. That's why Hari Guru Charana Padma is so important. It takes guidance to be able to tell someone you're over endeavoring. Your karma is not giving you all that you aspire for. You have to scale back because your spiritual life's being affected. That's why a guru is so necessary. Because we get so blinded by social comparison. Oh, look at that family. They have 3 cars. They have this and that, property investments. And why don't we have that? So easy, isn't it? I often hear from ladies, why can't my husband be nice and emotional like that one? I always have to tell them, look, guess what? You married a man. Why can't he be more emotional? And they always, the grass is greener on the other side. They point to some other, he's very emotional. Of course, men hate that. When you compare them to others and make them feel lowly, they can't stand it. The male ego has to always be polished. So during Kartik, you can polish your hearing and chanting, sharpen it in some way. You'll notice the difference. It's a wonderful month for noticing that difference. And that realization will carry with you for the months after. You may not be able to go to Vrindavan every year, Mayapur every year, but Kartik, you can up your game a bit. And then if you're fortunate, you can carry on after Kartik. Yeah. He's asking, how can we go deeper into our hearing and chanting, go deeper. When we're repeating the same activity. What's that same activity? But what are you reading? What are you chanting? Yes, but the Mahamantra is not the same old thing. Ever fresh. Nama Chintamani Krishna Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. It's the touchstone that's ever fresh. The form of all blissful rasas. Purna Shuddha Nitya Mukta. It's perfect and complete, pure. It's pure and eternally liberated. So you should aspire to taste the ever freshness of talks about Krishna, chanting about Krishna. Never make the mistake of thinking it's the same old thing. It is not. Your perception can be polluted in that way, but at least intellectually understand every time your tongue touches Hare Krishna, there's a difference. Gradually, you'll be able to detect that. I always remember when I saw Prabhupada in Atlanta in 1975, January or February of 75, and devotees were presenting a drama for him. Prabhupada was on the Vyasa-san, and the drama was taking place in the temple room. It was the Chankazi drama. Everyone knows about that pastime, the Chankazi, smashing the Mridanga, and then Mahaprabhu organizes civil disobedience. Thousands upon thousands of devotees came to the house of the Chankazi. The devotees were carrying torches. They were in a rowdy mood. They were destroying the Chankazi's gardens, and the Chankazi was trembling inside. What's going on? What's going on? The Chankazi had been instigated by so-called Hindus who felt threatened by the Harinam Sankirtan of Mahaprabhu. So they had gone to the Chankazi and they had told him, this Nimai Pandit is ruining the Hindu religion. He's letting everyone chant the name of Krishna. So then, while Prabhupada was watching, the play went on got to the point where the so-called Hindu complainers were saying, if everyone chants the Hare Krishna mantra, its potency will reduce. Suddenly, Prabhupada leaned into the microphones. Potency has already increased because they said Krishna. He was onto it. Now you may say, who else can see that? But that you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So the acharyas are showing you the peak potential. It was a drama, but Prabhupada broke into the drama. The drama got to the point where the so-called Hindus, the devotees playing, the Hindus were saying, the more Krishna is chanted by the people in general, the more the potency of Krishna is reduced. And Prabhupada leaned into the microphone. Potency has already increased. He's seeing a different reality. We're trapped by the conditioned reality. Yes. You can, in a pure state of mind, create the spiritual world wherever you go. That's the peak potential of bhakti. That's what Gadadhar Pandit told Mahaprabhu. Mahaprabhu had tried to go to Vrindavan, but he came back. And one of the reasons he gave for coming back was Gadadhar Pandit wasn't happy with me going. But Gadadhar Pandit said, you don't need to go to Vrindavan. You're just doing that to show the example for the people in general. But the reality is, wherever you are is Vrindavan. Just like during Rath Yatra in Puri, Mahaprabhu is seeing Lord Jagannath. Mahaprabhu is in the role of Radharani. He's seeing Jagannath as Krishna. And he's dancing before Jagannath, explaining, Mora Mana Brindavana. My mind is Vrindavan. Will you kindly come back to Vrindavan, place your lotus feet in my mind? It's all in Chaitanya Charitamrita. You've read it? Read it again. Yes. From this perspective, from the perspective of a newcomer who hears about the concept of Maya. Okay.
Then they hear that hearing it following. Some of them may deem it convenient, might deem it as a convenient solution. Convenient for us to say, because many other religions say similar things.
And so we should give up. As a human being, I tell them, it's your responsibility to get the most comprehensive spiritual knowledge possible. That's your responsibility as a human being. And then my usual line, nowhere in Bhagavad Gita does Krishna ask you to believe in him. Everywhere he gives you process and tells you the results you'll get. He also tells you if you don't do it, these are the results you get. So isn't that fair? They go, generally, yeah. Because everyone's afraid of, especially in New Zealand, what is everyone afraid of? Religious belief. God, did you say that word? You can use the foulest language, bloody this, bloody that. But God? So I explained to them that nowhere in Bhagavad Gita does Krishna ask for religious belief. Everywhere in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna is giving you process. Enter the bhakti laboratory, apply your senses according to Krishna's instructions, you'll get the results. So most persons say, yeah, okay, I don't know if I'm going to do that, but it sounds reasonable. Others say, yeah, I'll give it a fair go. Don't let them intimidate you. Yes, way in the back, you have to speak loudly.
All right. How he
He was trying to join Lord Chaitanya in Puri, but his father, who's a devotee, was very wealthy, beyond what we can imagine, and had so many bodyguards watching over Raghunath Das. Every time Raghunath would try to run away, the bodyguards would drag him back. But Lord Chaitanya didn't tell him, never come be with me. He said, just be cool, calm, and strategic. Don't be so fanatical in your execution of trying to be with me. Just be strategic, be tactical. Do your household life so nicely that no one ever will suspect one day you're going to run away. Raghunath Das, whose disappearance was yesterday, was always aspiring to be with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. But his parents were super wealthy. And his mother was complaining to her husband, the father. Do something, do something, do something. And what did the father say? I bound him up as best as anyone can. His wife is like a demigoddess. She's so beautiful. He's got so much wealth, and he's still trying to run away. He's a madman for Gauranga. Now, it's not that his father was against Mahaprabhu. His father's a devotee. His father would hold Nam Hut gatherings at his home with Haridas Thakur as the teacher. That's what the nature of his father. But Lord Chaitanya, in a half-joking way, told Raghunath Das, your father is a materialist. So it's not that Raghunath Das was living at home in an anti-Krishna family. But even though his But his family, they all knew the glories of Lord Chaitanya. Still, family life is such that what? Stay at home. And Raghunath Das wanted to go. So it's not that Mahaprabhu told him, stay at home forever. He told him, just go about your whole situation very strategically. Execute your family affairs so that no one knows what's on your mind, what's your real aspiration. The example is given in the 7th canto by Yudhishthira Maharaj in his talks with Narada Muni. Yudhishthira Maharaj says, or is it Narada Muni who responds to Yudhishthira Maharaj's question, that in family affairs, the family members say, this is needed, that is needed. And so you should say, yes, yes. Play the drama. Yeah, oh, certainly. So that's what Lord Chaitanya told Raghunath Das. Execute your material affairs so expertly that no one suspects that one day you're going to run away. But while you're executing material affairs, we forget that part. It's not that Raghunath Das was simply executing his material affairs. Keep your mind, Mahaprabhu told him, keep your mind on the goal. Keep your eyes on the prize. Always think of Krishna. Well, externally, you seem to be into all the household dramas. Do them expertly, but inside, you're meditating on Radha and Krishna. Oh, yeah. Who asked that question? Yes. All right. You want some further elucidation? Yes, but Raghunath Das is of a different fabric than Kurma Brahmana. Through Kurma Brahmana, Lord Chaitanya, Chaitanya Charitamrita tells us, is speaking the strategy that he followed, that Mahaprabhu followed throughout his tour of South India. He would do the same thing, Kaviraj Goswami says. He would say the same thing to whomever he met. Stay at home, chant Hare Krishna. That was Lord Chaitanya's South India preaching strategy. Raghunath Das, special category. Yes. Yes. She's asking in reference to Lord Chaitanya's instruction to Kurma Brahmana. We have to guard against the drop in the bucket mentality, which demobilizes us. I'm just doing a little bit. What's the use in my even doing that? Let me just stay at home without in any way trying to follow Lord Chaitanya's order to give Krishna to others. What will my efforts, what difference will my efforts make? That's demobilizing, demotivating. I've often explained, I've met so many devotees who became devotees by meeting someone on Sankirtan, and that Sankirtan devotee was not a full-time Sankirtan devotee, someone who had just gone out for 1 or 2 hours and was having a tough time. When am I going to go? All right, when's my 2 hours up? It's really a grind. And they don't even remember. They sold 1 book that day. They don't remember. They just remember their misery, so-called misery. But that 1 book they sold, the person who bought it became a devotee. And 6 months later, that person appears and says, don't you remember me? I'm so thankful you sold me this book. And the devotee is thinking, that was a horrible day on Sankirtan. I only sold one book in 2 hours. You don't know how Lord Chaitanya is going to use you. So whether you're an intercontinental traveling preacher or a family preacher or neighborhood preacher, do something. Never think, oh, what's the use? It's just a drop in the bucket compared to an ocean. That's the greatest demobilizing, demotivating attitude. That's why I like Vaisheshika Prabhu's motto for monthly Sankirtan festivals. He tells devotees, if you just go out the door and your feet touch the footpath, that's success. You got out the door. Not whether you distributed this many books or that, but just you go out the door and your feet have touched the footpath. Success. You got out. In other words, take baby steps if necessary. So when does Kartik start? Tuesday. All right, this is our opportunity for sharpening our hearing and chanting habits, singing the Damodarastic prayers every day. Namamishvaram Satchidanandarupam Lasakundalam Gokule Brajaman. The prayer begins by reminding you of the position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then the prayer goes deeper into Raga, presenting Lord Chaitanya, Lord Krishna, and Mother Yashoda. And it ends presenting Srimati Radha. Namo Radhikaya Tvatiyas Priyai. Namo Nanta Lilai Evai. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.